The Edge of Resolve. Chapter 1. Shadows of Determination. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the grand plaza of Breathing Falls. Fable Rook stood at the edge, breathing in the cool evening air. The townspeople moved like spectres, faces etched with weariness, their whispers mingling with the sound of rushing water from the nearby falls. Whispers of a lurking corruption twisted through the plaza, deepening the tension in the air. Fable's mind raced with images of the community's suffering. He had witnessed the illness tighten its grip on the town, but the spectre of Icarus loomed larger than any ailment. The weight of their suffering pressed on him, a tangible thing, urging him to act while fear coiled around his resolve. Fable's gaze fell on an elderly woman, her hands trembling as she clutched a tattered shawl. Each labored breath seemed to draw the warmth from the day, her frail frame swaying in the twilight. He wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, but dread clamped his throat. Icarus had eyes everywhere. Confronting him felt like tossing a stone into the depths of the falls. Chaos would surely follow. The whispers of dissent grew louder, yet so did the fear of retribution. Could he truly confront the man who controlled the town? He moved closer to the crowd, faces merging into a collective expression of despair. A child coughed, a sharp rattling sound that sliced through the murmurs. A tightness gripped Fable's chest. The child's mother, her eyes filled with anguish, cradled her little one, desperation radiating off her in waves. This was more than illness, it was a blight. The image of Icarus, lounging in his palace as the town fell apart, sparked a fierce anger in Fable. He clenched his fists, knuckles white against the gathering darkness. How could he remain silent while they suffered? A gust of wind swept through the plaza, carrying the scent of damp earth and something bitter, like burnt leaves. Fable inhaled deeply, grounding himself in the moment. The urgency of the situation seeped into his bones. He imagined confronting Icarus, the words spilling from his lips like a dam breaking. But doubt crept into his mind, conjuring images of failure and harsh consequences. What if he lost everything? What if he lost them? Each heartbeat echoed the question, a reminder of the stakes. The plaza pulsed with an electric tension, a chorus of unspoken fears. All around him, the townspeople remained trapped in their suffering, and Fable was ensnared between the desire to stand up and the threat of staying silent. Determination surged within him, a flicker against the darkening sky. He took a step forward, then another, the ground firm. Determination surged within him, a flicker against the darkening sky. With each step, the ground felt firm beneath Fable's feet, yet the plaza, once vibrant with life, now felt like a crucible. The air was thick with tension, the undercurrent of unease palpable as whispers of conspiracies echoed amidst the sounds of rushing water and distant chatter. This was it. He pushed forward, each movement a defiant challenge to the corruption festering beneath the surface, the time for confrontation drawing near. But as shadows of power loomed, one question lingered, heavy and inevitable. Could one voice truly change the tide, or would it drown in the echoes of fear? The grand plaza of Breathing Falls sprawled before him, an expanse of stone and water, yet its former beauty now felt tainted. Icarus stood at its heart like a spectre, laughter mingling with the whispers of the townspeople, their faces clouded with uncertainty. Fable clenched his fists, skin prickling with tension. He inhaled the scent of damp earth and the distant clang of metal, allowing the moment to settle. This was it. He stepped forward, a challenge to the corruption that festered beneath the surface. Enforcers loomed, a wall of muscle and menace. Fable hesitated, his pulse quickening as he faced Icarus. One of them, a man with a scar slicing through his brow, crossed his arms, blocking any path forward. "You think you can question him?" the enforcer spat, voice low and dangerous. Fable swallowed hard, a metallic taste of fear coating his tongue. Brows knitted, he squared his shoulders. Beneath the bravado, doubt gnawed at him. Could he truly stand against this? Icarus turned, a smirk dancing on his lips, the sun glinting off his polished shoes. "Ah, Fable Rook, making a grand entrance, are we? How quaint." His voice oozed condescension, a blade sheathed in velvet. Fable's resolve flickered like a candle in the wind, yet desperation sparked anew. This wasn't just about him,
It was about everyone silenced by Icarus's grip. But the enforcers shifted, their stance unwavering, and the weight of their threat coiled around his chest. No escape. No way forward. His voice faltered, swallowed by the roar of a nearby waterfall, drowning his courage. Fable's thoughts whirled, desperate for an escape, clarity emerging within the chaos. Confrontation wasn't the only path. Gathering evidence, sowing doubt, that was a quieter rebellion. He withdrew a step, eyes locked on Icarus. "This is but a whisper in the night, my friend. The song of hope will rise again."
The grand plaza of Breathing Falls loomed before Fable, twilight casting an ominous veil over the uneven cobblestones. Shadows danced like phantoms, whispering the town's pain. His heart raced with the urgency of his mission. The townspeople huddled together, their brows furrowed and lips pressed in worry. They needed someone to expose the truth about Icarus Quill's corruption before it was too late, before the week ended and Fable was forced to make a promise he could never keep. He inhaled deeply, the weight of their despair pressing against him. Now was the time to confront Icarus, but the fear of retribution clawed at him, tightening like a noose around his resolve. Fable stepped closer to the edge of the plaza, laughter echoing in the distance, a sound that sent chills down his spine. Icarus and his gang reveled somewhere beyond the shadows, their merriment a stark contrast to the grief surrounding him. Each chuckle sliced through the air, igniting a fire of resentment in the townspeople's eyes. He clenched his fists, the tremor of fear coiling in his gut. Time dragged on, each second a heavy weight that suffocated him with doubt. 3 days left. If he didn't act, the promise he dreaded would become a reality. The voices of the sick and suffering echoed in his ears, urging him to push through the paralysis of fear. What if they find out? What if they come for me? His breath quickened, but he whispered fiercely to himself, "No, I must do this. For them, my sweet ones." The plaza was alive with the murmur of despair, each voice a reminder of the stakes at hand. Fable could almost see the illness spreading like a dark cloud, consuming hopes and dreams. The faces of the townspeople blurred, yet their pain remained sharp, piercing through his resolve. A child's raw, desperate cough echoed through the plaza, reigniting the fire within him. "I have to do this," he sang softly to himself, a lullaby of courage building. For them, yet as he poised himself for action, a cold dread gripped his heart. What if confronting Icarus only brought more suffering? He could feel their eyes on him, Icarus's mocking laughter daring him to take a step forward. The pressure built, squeezing his chest until he could barely breathe. There was no safety net, no easy way out. "Only 3 days," he muttered, each word heavy with urgency. "Only 3 days," with a final shuddering breath. Fable stepped forward, ready to confront Icarus Quill. He cast one last glance at the plaza, at the faces of those who depended on him. As he turned toward the alley where Icarus often lingered, a figure emerged from the shadows, a gang member, eyes glinting with malice. Fable froze, heart. As dusk draped its velvet cloak over the grand plaza of Breathing Falls, the air shimmered with the mingling scents of fried cave fish and wild berries from the bustling street vendors. Lanterns flickered to life, casting warm hues on the cobbled stones, where families gathered around makeshift tables, sharing stories and fermented grain porridge. Fable Rook stood at the edge of the plaza, the fabric of his tunic heavy against his skin. The low hum of conversation surrounded him, punctuated by the occasional laughter of children darting between stalls, blissfully unaware of the whispers spiraling through the crowd about strange illnesses plaguing their town. Today he would confront Icarus, the charming face of the crime family, who had turned their suffering into profit. Fable's gaze shifted to Icarus, leaning against a stone pillar with casual grace, a plate of roasted goat meat in hand. The meat glistened under the lantern light, its rich aroma wafting toward Fable, stirring his hunger despite a knot of tension tightening in his stomach. Icarus caught sight of him and offered a disarming smile, the kind that had charmed many into complacency. "Fable, you look like you've seen a ghost. Join me for a bite? It's the best in the plaza." He gestured to the food, but Fable's resolve hardened. He wouldn't be swayed by a mere meal, not when lives hung in the balance. As he stepped closer, locals murmured amongst themselves, their eyes darting between Fable and Icarus, the tension palpable. A woman selling herbal teas nearby paused, hands trembling slightly as she stirred her mixture, the scent of chamomile mingling with the night air. Their scrutiny pressed on him like a weight. He straightened his shoulders and met Icarus's gaze, steady and unyielding.
People are suffering, Icarus. You know it. And the rumors about the crime family aren't just whispers anymore. They're the truth. How can you stand there eating while they... Icarus chuckled, a sound that wrapped around Fable like a noose. Rumors, my dear Fable. You know how they spread like wildfire. Just a few ill-timed events, nothing more. Besides, my family has always been generous to the people. He waved a hand dismissively, the gesture bordering on rude as he turned his back to the crowd, ignoring the eyes that bore into him. Fable's pulse quickened. He opened his mouth to respond, but words caught in his throat as a commotion erupted at the far end of the plaza, shouts mingling with the jangle of metal. A figure stumbled through the crowd, clutching a charred relic of the vanished people. Panic etched across their face. Blood surged, quickening with recognition as Fable identified the object, an artifact from the old days, a taboo to speak of after sunset. The crowd parted with gasps cascading through the throng. Icarus's expression shifted, his charm momentarily slipping as he took a step back, eyes narrowing. This was Fable's chance, the distraction he needed to expose Icarus.
As dusk settled over the grand plaza of Breathing Falls, Fable pressed against the cold stone wall, breath quickening amid the chaos that enveloped the space. Shadows flickered beneath the torches, their flames dancing to the frantic murmurs of the crowd, a tide of anxiety crashing against his resolve. He noticed the relic, the way it twisted the crowd's focus, drawing their eyes from Icarus's smirk, now a tight-lipped line. The atmosphere was tense and electric, filled with an undercurrent of unease as whispers of conspiracies threaded through the air, mingling with the distant sound of rushing water. Standing here in the heart of Breathing Falls, he faced a choice: retreat into the shadows or step into the fray, where truth and danger intertwined. Fable's fingers clenched into fists, nails digging into his palms as urgency pulsed through him like a drumbeat. He scanned the plaza where faces contorted with confusion, anger and fear. A woman clutching her child darted away, eyes wide with panic. Each frantic movement ignited a different fear within him. What if he made the wrong choice? What if he failed them all? The taste of doubt was bitter on his tongue. The people had always relied on him to act, to uncover the truth. Now he had to decide, stand tall or cower in silence, letting Icarus's shadow loom over them all. A group of men shouted, gesturing wildly, their voices rising above the chaos like a desperate symphony. The weight of Icarus's gaze, cold and calculating, drilled into him from across the plaza. The figure of the relic bearer, a blurred silhouette, haunted his mind. Would gathering evidence truly suffice? The thought sent a chill through him. What if he brought this upon himself, embroiling the town in more danger? Yet as he witnessed the turmoil, a flicker of conviction ignited within him, a whisper he could not ignore. Fable retreated deeper into the shadows, where the stone walls echoed the murmurs of frightened townsfolk. The rush of water from the nearby falls filled the air, a reminder of the life pulsing around him as he watched the chaos unfold as if he were an outsider. Leaning against the cool stone, its rough surface grounding him, he wrestled with his thoughts. If he did nothing, the cycle would continue, Icarus's grip tightening around Breathing Falls. But if he acted, he would risk everything. He inhaled the damp scent of moss and stone, allowing clarity to wash over him. A vow settled in his chest, firm and unyielding. He would gather evidence, expose the truth, and confront Icarus. The shadows would be his ally, not his prison. With resolve hardening in his veins, he stepped from the darkness into the light, the roaring falls a testament to the power of truth waiting to be unleashed. A question lingered in his mind. Chapter 2. Echoes of Awakening. The cascading sanctuary loomed before Fable, an intricate dance of beauty and turmoil. Morning light poured through the vast glass panels, casting a kaleidoscope of shimmering reflections upon the polished stone walkways. The air buzzed with the constant roar of the waterfall, a reminder of nature's might, mingling with the earthy scent of damp soil and wildflowers. Mist clung to his skin, cool and invigorating, while the rough edge of the cliffside brushed against his palm as he ventured deeper into the sanctuary's embrace. Each step echoed softly, the sound of his boots muted by the gentle cascade of water, shrouding him in a veil of unease. Just ahead lay the central atrium, the glass ceiling reflecting a pale morning sky that seemed to mirror his trepidation. Fable approached the central atrium, his pulse quickening at the sight of the glass ceiling reflecting the pale morning sky. Shadows danced along the walls, flickering like ghosts of doubt. Icarus Quill stood by the observation deck, his back to Fable, arms crossed, exuding an air of confidence that unsettled him.
The scent of polished wood surrounded Icarus, contrasting sharply with the turbulent emotions roiling within Fable. Clearing his throat, he summoned the courage to confront the man who had manipulated so many lives. "I have heard whispers of a letter, Icarus. What secrets do you weave behind your smile?" His voice, though steady, trembled under the weight of the accusation. Icarus turned slowly, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips, bright but foreboding. "Hiding? Or perhaps just safeguarding dear Fable? Curiosity can lead one into perilous waters, especially for the uninitiated. The townspeople trust me. What makes you think they would believe you over me?" His words dripped with honeyed malice, each syllable striking at Fable's resolve. The rushing water behind him pulsed ominously, a stark reminder of the stakes involved. What was meant to be a sanctuary now felt like a trap, suffocating him with its deceptive calm. "I am prepared for whatever truth you might reveal." Fable shot back, fists clenching at his sides, the cool mist prickling against his skin like 1,000 tiny needles. "You've put them through hell with your experiments, and I won't stand by while you destroy their lives." The air thickened with tension, the scent of fear hanging like a storm cloud. Icarus stepped closer, his presence a heavy weight pressing down on Fable. "Be careful, Fable. Pursuing this path could lead to your downfall. Trust is a fragile thing, and in this world you might find yourself utterly alone." As Icarus retreated into the shadows of the sanctuary, Fable stood in the atrium. The waterfall surged behind him, its relentless sound echoing.
Fable lingered in the atrium. The cascading water echoed, a creature caught in a trap. Icarus had slipped into the shadows, leaving behind an unsettling silence that wrapped around Fable like a shroud. The morning sun filtered through the leaves, dappling the floor with light, but it conspired against him. He clutched the letter, its edges sharp against his palm, a reminder of the truth he dared not face. Every rustle of paper whispered from the past, urging him to confront the darkness lurking within the sanctuary's elegant facade. With a deep breath, Fable squared his shoulders, ready to unveil the secrets hidden within those words. Fable unfolded the letter, its creases sharp and defiant. The ink blazed against the pale paper, words that seemed to pulse with their own life. "A deal has been struck. The families will suffer, but prosperity is assured for those who comply." Each line ignited a fire within him, a mix of rage and disbelief. He glanced up at Icarus, who leaned against the wall, arms crossed, a smirk dancing on his lips. Denial dripped from him like the water spilling over the stones. "It's just a coincidence, Fable. You're reading too much into this." The air thickened, tension rising like the vines creeping along the sanctuary's walls. "Coincidence?" Fable's voice cracked. "People are suffering because of this. You can't ignore it." Icarus shrugged, nonchalant, but the flicker of unease in his eyes betrayed him. "This is a game, Fable. The townspeople have always been pawns, you know that as well as I do." The weight of his words settled between them, a chasm widening. Fable stepped closer. The floor beneath him felt treacherous, a path of choices. "No, this isn't a game. We're part of it, whether we like it or not. You can't just dismiss this." His voice rose, echoing off the sanctuary walls, a challenge thrown into the stillness. Icarus's expression hardened, the smirk fading into something darker, more primal. "And what do you propose we do? Fight against the tide?" Fable's heart raced, the truth crashing over him like the waterfall behind them. The sanctuary, once a haven, now felt like a prison of secrets. "We expose them. We can't let this continue." His fists curled, nails biting into his palms, a wave of determination rising. Icarus straightened, his posture tense. "And risk everything? You think they'll let us walk away?" The intensity of their debate hung in the air, thickening with every exchanged word. "If we don't act, we're complicit." Morning sunlight streamed through the large glass panels of the cascading sanctuary, casting fractured rainbows across the polished stone floors. The air was thick with the mist rising from the majestic waterfall outside, mingling with the scent of damp earth and wildflowers. Shadows flickered along the walls, echoing the turmoil within Fable. Each breath tasted fresh yet heavy, laden with the promise of confrontation, as he stepped deeper into the sanctuary's enigmatic embrace. The sound of the waterfall crescendoed, creating a haunting melody that resonated in his bones, a reminder of the sanctuary's dual nature, a refuge and a den of deception.
Fable stood at the entrance of the central atrium, his boots whispering against the smooth stone walkway, the coolness sending a shiver up his spine. He glanced at Icarus, who leaned against the wall, arms crossed, a predatory glint in his eyes. "Do you truly believe you possess the power to unveil our secrets?" Icarus's voice dripped with cold amusement, echoing off the walls like the distant roar of water. Fable's heart thudded against his ribs, the weight of the letter burning in his pocket, a tangible symbol of hope and danger alike. The atmosphere grew stifling, and Fable fought the urge to recoil. He held his ground, feeling the rough texture of the stone wall behind him, as Icarus advanced. "You're isolated here, Fable. Think of the cost. Do you want to lose everything?" Icarus's tone darkened, each word a calculated blow. The scent of wildflowers faded, replaced by an acrid tang that seeped into the air. Fable swallowed hard, refusing to let Icarus see any hint of doubt. Just then, hushed voices drifted through a nearby alcove, slicing through the oppressive atmosphere. He turned, straining to catch the words, his heart racing at the prospect of crucial information slipping away. They plan to strike at dawn, just as the sun breaks over the valley. One voice murmured, urgency lacing their tone. Fable inhaled sharply, the reality of their impending move crashing over him. The sanctuary buzzed with urgency as the mist coiled around him like a serpent, urging him to act. The waterfall's roar transformed into a battle cry, and Fable's determination hardened. "I mustn't falter now, not when the melody of hope sings so sweetly in my heart," he whispered, the words barely audible over the cacophony of rushing water. Icarus's smirk faltered slightly, and Fable seized the moment, the taste of resolve flooding his mouth as he prepared to confront the darkness lurking behind the sanctuary's serene facade.
Morning light spilled into the cascading sanctuary, illuminating the glass panels that framed the majestic waterfall. Fable inhaled deeply, the crisp, earthy scent of damp soil mingling with wild flowers wafting through the air, a bittersweet reminder of the beauty that masked the sinister truths lurking within. The rushing water filled the space, its relentless melody echoing off the polished stone walkways, creating an unsettling harmony that reverberated through the sanctuary. The cool mist clung to his skin, invigorating him as he moved deeper into the belly of the sanctuary. Today was not a day for retreat. Today was a day for revelation. Fable stepped cautiously onto the smooth stone walkway, its surface cool beneath his bare feet. Sunlight filtered through the glass ceiling above, casting fractured shadows that danced across the floor like specters of doubt. The soft murmurs of hidden conversations wafted through the alcoves, each whisper a reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond the polished facade. He paused at the edge of an observation deck, gripping the railing and breathing faster as he gazed down into the valley. The vibrant greens of the wildflowers below contrasted sharply with the greys of the stone walls, a vivid tapestry of life that pulsed with the same rhythm as the waterfall's descent. With a steadying breath he turned back, resolve hardening within him. As he approached Icarus, an uneasy silence settled between them, the scent of stale coffee and something metallic hanging heavily in the air. Icarus leaned casually against the wall, the sunlight catching the sharp angles of his face, but Fable sensed the predator lurking behind his cool demeanor. "You shouldn't be here, Fable," Icarus warned, his voice low and smooth like the water's flow, but laced with an undercurrent of menace. "You genuinely believe you're the hero here? The townsfolk will see through your charade. Trust me." Fable fidgeted with the letter pressed against his thigh, determination igniting in his chest. "I sense the shadows you cast. Icarus, I will not retreat into the darkness." The waterfall's roar crescendoed outside, drowning out Icarus's response, but Fable's steely gaze remained locked on his antagonist. Icarus smirked, his eyes glinting like shards of glass. "You're playing a dangerous game, and you're out of your depth." The words hit him like stones, each one cold and heavy, but Fable refused to let fear seep into his resolve. He straightened, the cool mist from the waterfall brushing against him like a challenge. "I'm done being afraid. This ends now." As the echoes of their confrontation faded into the background hum of the sanctuary, Fable stood firm, heart pounding. The waterfall's relentless sound a reminder of the battle that lay ahead. He glanced at the shimmering glass ceiling, where the morning light began to... The grand plaza of Breathing Falls thrummed with tension, the morning sun struggling to pierce the thick blanket of clouds overhead. Fable Rook stood at the edge of the square, his fist clenched tightly around a crumpled letter, its ink smudged yet resolute. Around him the air was thick with whispers and the distant rush of water, a current of anxiety that curled around the townspeople. The stakes loomed large, one misstep and the truth would drown beneath the weight of lies. Drawing in a breath, Fable stepped forward, his voice steadying as he called for the townspeople. "Gather, we must confront the crime family." The echo of his words hung in the air, a faint beacon amid the gathering storm of fear. Faces turned, some curious, others wary, but Fable pressed on. The letter was a lifeline, a testament to the corruption strangling their lives. "This letter reveals the truth. They manipulate us." His voice rose, cutting through the murmurs. A few stepped closer, eyes brightening with recognition. A flicker of hope shone in the townspeople's eyes, but Fable's stomach twisted with dread as a familiar figure emerged from the crowd. Icarus, with his disarming smile. Icarus sauntered forth, hands raised in feigned innocence. "And what of this letter?" he asked, his voice smooth as silk. A trick, perhaps, a ploy to incite panic. The townspeople shifted, casting glances filled with doubt. The words fell flat, met with silence, and Fable's frustration surged. He stepped forward, urgency rising in his chest. "No, you know me. We cannot let fear rule us." But the words seemed to dissolve into the thick air around him, failing to sway the crowd. Icarus continued, his voice a smooth current weaving uncertainty through the air. "What will happen if we confront them? More violence, more blood." A murmur rippled through the crowd, fear etching itself into their features. Fable's pulse raced, each beat a reminder of the time slipping away. He held the letter high, a beacon. "This is our chance. We can change things." But dread settled in around him like a thick fog, and he felt the crowd's resolve wavering. One by one, the townspeople drifted away, casting sidelong glances as they retreated, leaving Fable standing alone in the plaza. The weight of the letter pressed against his palm, a reminder of what could have been. Icarus's laughter floated through the air, a cruel melody underscoring his isolation. The waterfall's roar echoed in the distance, a relentless reminder of the truth he had yet to unveil. As the last of the crowd disappeared, Fable clenched his jaw, determination hardening his resolve. He would not let this be the end.
Chapter 3 Shadows of Defiance. The grand plaza of Breathing Falls simmered under the midday sun, a scene of beauty overshadowed by horror. Fable Rook stood rigid, his pulse quickening as the terrified cries of the townsfolk drowned out the waterfall's soothing roar. With only days left before the week's end, he was acutely aware of the urgency to confront Icarus Quill's tyranny. He had to grasp the extent of the oppression that choked his people. But the sight before him, a townsperson convulsing on the cobblestones, surrounded by Quill's enforcers, held him in place, fear rooting him to the ground. The crowd surged, panic crackling through the air. Fable's breath hitched, the acrid scent of sweat and despair stinging his nostrils. Icarus Quill's enforcers towered over the writhing figure, their laughter a chilling soundtrack to the brutality. "You think you can resist?" One sneered, delivering a merciless kick. Fable's resolve wavered as he forced himself to confront the reality that clawed at his insides. 3 hours until the deadline, and here he was, paralyzed by fear, a puppet still entangled in strings he hadn't severed. The townsfolk cowered, eyes darting with dread, and Fable felt their desperation as a heavy weight. No one dared intervene. The enforcer's presence created an ironclad barrier against hope. Clenching his fists, he wrestled with the choice before him: risk his life for a fleeting chance at change. Yet a flicker of determination ignited within him, fueled by the pain surrounding him. Time was slipping away. In 3 days he would have to promise to uphold a truth he could not yet expose, and that thought constricted his chest. "Please, someone help," a voice cried from the ground, piercing through the haze of fear. Each plea echoed in his mind, amplifying the urgency of the moment. The choice loomed: remain silent or step forward. His instinct screamed for action, yet the enforcer's threat loomed large. Would he be another bystander, another silent witness to this brutality? The townsfolk needed him. He was drawn to their suffering, terrified, yet compelled to act. Fable stepped forward, locking eyes with the convulsing townsfolk, a mirror of his own fear. The enforcers turned, their sneers transforming into threats. In that heartbeat, everything narrowed to one moment. If he didn't act, he would lose everything: his chance, his promise, his purpose. With adrenaline surging through him, he shouted, "Leave him alone!" The challenge reverberated through the chaos, but the realization struck: he had crossed a line. The enforcers advanced, and Fable's resolve hardened. He had awakened the beast, and now there would be no turning back.
The countdown had begun, and he was ready to face the consequences.
The grand plaza of Breathing Falls glowed with the deepening shadows of dusk, the air thick with tension. Fable Rook pressed himself against the cold stone wall, heart racing in his chest. Around him, chaos erupted. The cries of townspeople mingled with the threatening advance of the enforcers. He had to act before the week ended, or the conspiracy would root itself into their lives forever. 3 days remained to unmask the truth and save those who had suffered under the crime family's grip. But what could he do? Every fibre of his being screamed to flee, yet the fallen townsman lay motionless, a grim reminder of the stakes. Would he retreat into silence, a coward among the brave, or would he confront the enforcers and risk everything? Fable's breath came in frantic gasps, each exhale a reminder of the impending deadline. The enforcers' laughter echoed through the plaza, a cruel symphony of power. The townspeople's faces blurred together, fear etched into their features, their eyes desperately searching for hope. "What are you waiting for?" they seemed to plead, and with every glance the weight of his inaction pressed down harder. Memories of watching friends fall victim to the enforcer's cruelty ignited a fire in his veins. The beast within him stirred, whispering, "You could save them. You could be their shield." But the enforcers were ruthless, and he was just one man. The choice loomed sharp and undeniable, a chasm he teetered over. He swallowed hard, an acrid taste of fear coating his tongue. The plaza pulsed with tension as Fable wrestled with his decision. Time crawled, each second stretching like an eternity. He could almost feel the breath of the enforcers on his neck, their silhouettes growing larger, more threatening. The thought of facing them sent his heart racing, yet the urgency of the situation clashed violently with his instincts. What if he acted and failed? The townsfolk would pay for his recklessness. As he glanced at the fallen man, inaction loomed as a choice, sharp and undeniable. If he didn't do something, the cycle of oppression would continue, and he would be complicit in their suffering. With each heartbeat, his resolve felt like it was being pulled tighter, a noose around his determination. "We don't have time for this." An urgent voice sliced through the chaos, snapping him from his spiral of doubt. A familiar face, a friend, pleaded with him from the crowd, desperation etched in her features. But the enforcers were closing in, their shadows growing longer, more ominous. Fable's mind raced, the pressure mounted, the countdown echoing in his ears. He could intervene, risking everything, or stay silent and watch yet another innocent suffer. The choice felt like an abyss, ready to swallow him whole. His hands trembled, caught between the Morning light filtered through the mist of Breathing Falls, casting a stark illumination over the turmoil of the Grand Plaza. Fable Rook stood on the edge, heart racing with the urgency of the moment. In the center, a townsman lay crumpled on the cobblestones, dragged by the thugs who wielded fear like a weapon. He couldn't remain passive. Time was running out if he didn't uncover the crime family's conspiracy by the week's end. The truth would be buried for good, and he would be forced into promises he couldn't keep. Fable inhaled deeply, ready to step forward, aware that this moment could alter everything. Fable remained rooted to the spot, watching the enforcers close in, their cruel laughter resonating ominously. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown. "I need to help them," he murmured, but uncertainty gnawed at his resolve. Icarus Quill, the leader, loomed over the fallen figure, his gaze sweeping the crowd with a predatory glint. This was his moment. Either he would take a stand or turn away. He clenched his fists, sweat slick against his palms. There was no time for hesitation. He had to act before the enforcers extinguished any hope left in the plaza. "Stay back," Quill barked, fixing his gaze on Fable with a predatory intensity. Panic surged through Fable's veins. He stepped forward, driven by a need to bridge the gap between oppression and hope. "You can't just take him." The words felt feeble, a whisper drowned by the rising tide of fear. The enforcers shifted, their stances menacing as they formed a barrier. "This is none of your business, puppet. Keep your distance or you'll regret it." Quill sneered, a smug smile ghosting on his lips. "Please, I can't let this happen." Fable's voice trembled, desperation spilling forth. He wanted to charge forward, to make a stand, but the enforcers closed in. Each second dragged on as the townsman's cries mingled with the escalating tension. Fable hesitated, aware that any action could come at a steep cost. This was a life on the line, but the risk to his own safety loomed large. As he surged forward, instinct propelling him, Quill's laughter rang out, sharp and mocking. Two enforcers stepped in front of him,
blocking his path with threatening postures. Fable halted, dread washing over him as the townsman was dragged away, their pleas fading into the distance, swallowed by the plaza's oppressive atmosphere. Defeat washed over him, yet a fire ignited in his chest. This battle might be lost, but the war was far from over. He turned away, fists clenched in determination, resolve hardening within him. He would not let this end here, not with the truth still waiting to be uncovered.
Dusk enveloped the grand plaza of breathing falls, shadows creeping from the corners like predators lurking for their prey. Fable Rook pressed his back firmly against the cool stone wall. His heart thundered against his ribcage as he replayed the horror, a townsman dragged away by Icarus Quill's enforcers. Laughter and chatter floated through the plaza, a cruel mockery of the chaos swirling in his mind. He had 3 days left to confront the suffocating grip of oppression, but fear paralyzed him, anchoring him in place. A decision loomed before him: stay silent and complicit, or risk everything to expose the truth behind Quill's sinister reign. Time slipped away, each passing second a condemnation of inaction. Fable recalled the townsfolk's cries, their desperation echoing in his ears. He had witnessed too many lives lost to the crime family's greed, their dreams extinguished like candles snuffed out by the wind. How many more would suffer if he remained hidden in the shadows? The thought clawed at him, a visceral reminder of the price of silence. Glancing toward the flickering lights of the plaza, the laughter felt like a dagger to his resolve. What if the enforcers found out? What if they turned their wrath on him? Every heartbeat resounded in his ears, drowning out the laughter, reminding him that time was running short. By the end of the week, the truth would be buried, and any hope of resistance would be lost forever. With every passing moment, doubt twisted in his gut, mixing with anxiety that turned his palms clammy. Fable squeezed his eyes shut, battling the weight of indecision. He could almost hear the clock counting down, each tick reminding him of the consequences that loomed over him. How could he stand up against a monster like Quill? What if he failed, and yet the thought of doing nothing, allowing oppression to continue, clawed at him, relentless and vicious. He had to choose, act now or remain a passive observer, but the fear of retaliation held him captive, tightening around him. The plaza pulsed with life, oblivious to his torment, and yet he had never felt more isolated, a single candle flickering in a storm. Then clarity struck like lightning. The image of the townsman being dragged away flashed in his mind, his face twisted in terror. Fable grounded himself against the stone. Silence was complicity, a choice in itself. If he did nothing, he was as guilty as Quill's enforcers. He had to act, had to risk his safety to ignite the flame of rebellion before the last grains of sand slipped through the hourglass. But even as resolve built within him, a new fear crept in. What if he made a promise he couldn't keep? What if, in his attempt to save others, he lost everything? Time slipped away. Fable Rook stood at the edge of the grand plaza of breathing falls. His heart thundered against his ribs. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows that danced like spectres of his guilt. The laughter of townsfolk echoed, a haunting reminder of the collapse he had witnessed, a life snuffed out in an instant, while he stood frozen. Time slipped through his fingers like sand. In less than a week, the truth behind Icarus Quill's corruption would be buried forever, taking with it any chance to save those he loved. 3 days remained, and the weight of inaction pressed heavily upon him. Fight back or remain a coward, the choice loomed before him, urgent and terrifying. His breath caught as he recalled the horror of that moment, the townsman crumpling under the enforcer's cruel hands. A knot tightened in Fable's stomach. How many more would fall if he remained silent? Each heartbeat echoed in his ears, a reminder that every second wasted was a death sentence for someone else. He could almost hear the ticking clock, each tick a countdown to his own complicity in the oppression. Would fear tether him to inaction? But then the shadows shifted, and the silhouette of an enforcer sharpened against the fading light. Adrenaline flooded Fable's veins as his heart raced. The enforcer's eyes glinted like shards, cold and unyielding. "You shouldn't be here, Rook," the figure growled, stepping closer, menacing and unyielding. Fable longed to run, to hide from the chaos of his own making. Yet deep down, a fire sparked, a longing to fight. But against the wrath of Quill, the stakes were dire, and the fear of what might come if he chose to act paralyzed him. "You have 3 days, Fable. 3 days before Quill ensures silence for good.
The words became a mantra of urgency in his mind. If he didn't act, if he failed to expose the tyranny, he would be trapped in a promise he could never keep. He could see the faces of those he loved, powerless and afraid, and his heart twisted. Would he betray them by retreating, or betray them by remaining silent? As the enforcer stepped closer, the choice burned, fight or hide, and either option could lead to devastation. Fable's breath came in shallow bursts as he weighed his options, the enforcer's shadow looming over him like a death sentence. A decision had to be made, and soon. With the enforcer within reach, Fable surged forward, desperation fueling his resolve. "I won't stand by any longer." Just as he moved, a voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "You think you can challenge us?" The urgency escalated, and as Fable turned, a glimmer of steel caught the last rays of sunlight, the enforcer drawing a blade. The clock was ticking, and choices would shatter like glass. Would he fight?
Chapter 4. Awakening in Dusk. The grand plaza of Breathing Falls buzzed with energy as dusk settled, painting the sky in rich shades of orange and violet. Fable Rook's heart thudded against his chest, a steady reminder of the urgency that pressed upon him. He had 3 days to unravel the crime family's corrupt web before their insidious plans took root. His promise to the townspeople loomed large. Icarus Quill stood at the edge of the plaza, encircled by wary guards, his gaze sharp, radiating an air of authority. Approaching him felt like navigating a tightrope, the atmosphere charged with tension and unspoken threats. Fable moved closer, the cacophony of laughter and haggling fading into a distant hum. "Icarus," he called, his voice maintaining a gentle cadence despite the adrenaline surging through him. Icarus turned, a brow raised, intrigue mingling with skepticism. "What brings you here, Rook?" Fable swallowed hard, the burden of his mission hanging heavily between them. "I was hoping we could share a gentle conversation about the recent happenings in town. You and your family have been quite busy, haven't you?" He feigned casual interest, but the stakes were palpable, and he needed to draw out a confession before the deadline loomed closer. Icarus's eyes narrowed, a chill creeping up Fable's spine as he sensed danger. "Busy, that's one way to put it. You've been watching too many shadows, Fable. What do you really want?" The defensive edge in Icarus's voice set alarms ringing in Fable's mind. The guards' scrutiny felt like knives at his back, their patience wearing thin. With each second wasted, the choices ahead loomed larger, forcing him to decide press forward or slip back into the shadows he loathed. "You know more than you're letting on, Icarus," Fable pressed, striving for a steady voice as pressure gripped him, urging him to act. "The experiments, the missing townsfolk, they all link back to you. I need proof, something I can take to the people." Icarus's lips curled into a mock smile, devoid of humor. "And what if I refuse? What if I choose to dismiss you as just another insignificant pest? Rook?" The weight of that threat settled heavily, a stark reminder that failure could mean not just this moment's loss, but the lives of those he sought to protect. Fable's breath quickened as Icarus stepped closer, a dangerous glint in his eye. "You think you can intimidate me into spilling secrets, you're naive, Rook? If you push too hard, you'll regret it. The consequences of failure will bind you, not me." A knot of panic gripped Fable, but he knew he had to act decisively. Would he risk everything to expose Icarus? Or retreat, leaving the truth buried in layers of corruption? The decision loomed larger than life, a choice that could seal the fate of Breathing Falls. The midday sun streamed through the cascading water of the cascading sanctuary, illuminating a vibrant gathering of vendors and townsfolk milling about. The air was thick with humidity, and Fable Rook adjusted the coarse fibers of his tunic, feeling the fabric cling uncomfortably to his skin. The rich aroma of roasted goat meat mingled with the sharp tang of wild berries and earthy mushrooms from a nearby stall, where a vendor served steaming bowls of fermented grain porridge to eager customers. Fable's gaze drifted to the guards surrounding Icarus Quill, their imposing presence marked by the crime family's emblem embroidered on their fine garments. They stood like statues, their eyes sharp and watchful. The weight of his mission pressed down on Fable, each moment lost inching him closer to failure. Fable took a deep breath, the air thick with the waterfall's mist and the acrid tang of sweat. He sidestepped a group of children sharing a bowl of porridge, their laughter ringing like chimes in the humid air. As he approached Icarus, he noticed the glimmer of a charm made from swamp herbs hanging from her neck, a reminder of the superstitions that ruled their lives.
Bowing slightly from the waist, he spoke with steady resolve. "Lady Quill, if you would be so kind as to lend me your ear, I find myself in need of your wisdom." The guards shifted, their eyes narrowing as he held their gaze. A slight nod from Icarus signaled him to continue, though a dismissive smirk curled her lips as if his request amused her. Icarus leaned back against the stone wall of the sanctuary, her fingers idly toying with a delicate fruit carved from a root vegetable. "Do you honestly believe I would be intrigued by such a half-baked idea? Those whispers of the vanished people seem to haunt you, don't they? Perhaps you should take a sip from the waterfall, seek clarity, but beware Ayla. He doesn't take kindly to nosy souls." Her laughter echoed, sharp and cutting. Fable's determination filled him as he recalled the stories of his father who had once dared to uncover the same truth. "You dismiss me easily, Lady Quill, but whispers can become roars. I know your family's grip on the valley's secrets. The people deserve the truth, and I will find it, even if it means digging through the filth of your empire." Fable's voice held a fervent edge, and for a fleeting moment intrigue flickered in her eyes. She straightened, the air thickening as the guards moved closer, hands hovering near their weapons. Icarus leaned in, her voice barely a whisper. "Perhaps you should look into those who serve me. They know more than you think." A surge of adrenaline rushed.
Dusk settled over the grand plaza of Breathing Falls, the sun dipping behind the cascading waterfalls, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and purple. Fable Rook stood at the edge of the plaza, a rapid heartbeat and thoughts swirling as he contemplated the weight of his mission. Only days remained before the week ended, and with it the chance to expose the sinister truths of the crime family, casting a long shadow over the town. Confronting Icarus Quill was no longer an option but a necessity. He had to gather evidence and unmask the corruption ensnaring so many. Failure meant breaking a promise he couldn't afford to make, a burden too heavy to bear. The murmurs of the townsfolk faded into a distant hum, their fates tied to the evidence he desperately needed to uncover. Icarus Quill leaned against a stone pillar, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips as Fable approached. "What do you want, Rook? Come to beg for mercy?" His eyes glinted with menace, and a cold sweat beaded on Fable's brow. The crowd around them, oblivious to the impending confrontation, continued their evening routines, laughter mixing with the sound of the rushing water. But all Fable could focus on was Quill, the embodiment of the very corruption he sought to dismantle. "I know what you've done, Icarus. I know about the experiments, about the people you've harmed." The words hung heavy in the air, charged with urgency, but Quill only chuckled, the sound dripping with disdain. "You think you can intimidate me with your little threats? You have no idea what you're dealing with. You're just a puppet, Fable, and puppets don't get to write the story." Every word Quill spoke pressed down on Fable's resolve, planting seeds of doubt. Yet he steadied himself, recalling the faces of those who had vanished, those who couldn't fight back. "I won't back down. I'll expose you. The town will know the truth before it's too late." Time slipped away, each second amplifying the stakes. Quill stepped closer, towering over him, and Fable's pulse quickened. The scent of damp stone and moss mingled with his rising panic. "You think you're brave? You're just a boy playing hero. By the end of the week you'll wish you never set foot here." The threat loomed between them, palpable and suffocating. Fable's breath caught in his throat, a stark reminder of the stakes. He couldn't let fear paralyze him now. Clenching his fists, determination surged within him. "You're wrong. I have the evidence. I just need a little more time to gather it." Quill laughed, the sound cold and humorless. "Time? You think you have time? You think you can unravel my empire? You're out of your league?" With each taunt, Fable felt the walls closing in. He couldn't afford to falter, not with so much at stake. The crowd's laughter faded into an eerie silence as he leaned in. The grand plaza of Breathing Falls thrummed with an electric tension as dusk painted the sky in hues of purple and orange. Fable Rook stood at the heart of it, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and moss, memories clawing at his mind. The gentle rush of cascading water masked the whispers that swirled around him, anxious voices blending into a murmur of conspiracies. A flicker of movement caught his eye, shadows shifting among the crowd. He felt the familiar tug of nostalgia, the faintest echo of laughter from his past, mingling with the aroma of medicinal herbs that wafted through the plaza. It reminded him of the theater, of joy once shared, now clouded by the crime family's dark influence. He had to act fast.
the weight of unspoken promises pressed on his wooden shoulders. Fable shifted his stance, tilting his head in curiosity as he scanned the crowd. There, cloaked in the shadows, were faces he recognized, spies of the Quill family, their eyes darting like hawks hunting for prey. He felt a pang of doubt, a flicker of uncertainty. But then the cobblestones beneath him seemed to pulse with the urgency of his mission, urging him forward. He stepped through the throng, weaving past the townsfolk who whispered and pointed, their eyes wide with fear and hope. A gentle melody hummed from his lips, a soothing lullaby that echoed the harmony of his long-lost performances, drawing strength from the memories even as they haunted him. Fable's heart quickened as he approached Icarus Quill, who stood like a king among his subjects, charisma oozing from his every pore. The man's smile was disarming, yet Fable sensed the predator lurking beneath the surface. "Ah, Fable Rook! Back where you belong, in the heart of the action! How quaint!" Quill said, the words dripping with mockery. Fable's hands gestured wildly, crafting a dance of inquiry as he mimed his intentions. He needed to pry information from this man while maintaining the guise of camaraderie, his dramatic gestures a language of their own. "You know the plaza once echoed with laughter, Icarus. Now it's just whispers and shadows," Fable pretended to muse, tilting his head again, a reminder of the joy that had been stripped away. Quill chuckled, a sound that sent a shiver down Fable's spine. "Ah, the past is a distant memory, my friend. We must live in the present, wouldn't you agree?" The underlying threat in his voice was palpable, a reminder of the control he wielded. Fable's fingers clenched, the soft fabric of his sleeve crumpling under the pressure, a silent vow forming in his heart. "You seem tense, Fable. A puppet like you should be dancing, not lurking in corners. Join the festivities, won't you?" Quill gestured towards the crowd, his eyes glinting with amusement. Fable felt his resolve salute.
As dusk settled over the grand plaza of Breathing Falls, shadows stretched like fingers across the cobblestones, and the air buzzed with the tension of an impending storm. Fable Rook stood at the edge of the gathering, heart thundering in his chest, each beat a reminder of the ticking clock. If he didn't confront Icarus Quill soon, the truth would slip through his fingers, lost to the machinations of the crime family that loomed like a dark cloud over the town. The week was nearly over. Failure meant not just betrayal of his own ideals, but a promise he knew he could never keep. Gathering his courage, he stepped forward into the throng, determined to gather evidence against the man who had charmed his way through countless lives, including Fable's own. Fable's breath quickened as he navigated through the crowd, each face a mask of indifference or admiration for Quill, who stood at the center, regaling onlookers with tales that drew laughter and applause. What irony! They laughed while he orchestrated the decay of their lives, Fable's fists clenched, the sensation of sweat trickling down his back igniting a fire of defiance. He had to reach Quill before the clock struck midnight on his town, a deadline that loomed closer with each passing second. "Time's running out," he whispered to himself, urgency pushing him forward, even as doubt gnawed at the edges of his resolve. A moment of hesitation crept in as Quill's laughter echoed through the plaza, a siren call that threatened to pull Fable back into the shadows of passivity. But Fable swallowed hard, forcing his feet to move. He stepped closer, catching Quill's eye. The man's sly smile faded, replaced by a glimmer of recognition. "Fable Rook, come to bask in my brilliance?" Quill's voice dripped with mockery, but beneath it lay a current of something darker. "I know what you're doing, Icarus," Fable blurted, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "I know about the experiments, the people you're hurting." The crowd buzzed, their eyes darting between the two, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "You're mistaken," Quill said, his charm back in place, but Fable could see the flicker of annoyance beneath. The seconds ticked by like a countdown, each one amplifying Fable's resolve. "I'm not mistaken," he insisted, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. "You can't keep this up. I will expose you." Quill's eyes narrowed, the playful facade cracking. "Expose me? You're a mere puppet, Fable. You think you can cut the strings? You're running out of time." Fable's heart raced, the truth in Quill's words stinging. The man was right, the week was nearly over, and every moment wasted pulled him closer to a promise of inaction. But Fable felt the weight of his town pressing against him, the faces of those who depended on him, igniting. Chapter 5 Threshold of Awakening. Dawn broke over the cascading sanctuary, casting long shadows through the intricate arches of the ancient structure. Fable Rook stood at the threshold, heart pounding in his chest,
the weight of desperation pressing down like a leaden cloak. He had come to confront Icarus Quill, the architect of the crime family's corruption, demanding the return of his abducted ally. Time was slipping away. By the week's end, if he failed to expose the truth, he would have to make a promise to the townspeople he could never keep. Every second counted, and Fable knew he couldn't afford to hesitate. The sanctuary felt alive, thrumming with the urgency of his mission. Fable stepped inside, the cool air wrapping around him like a shroud. His thoughts raced. He could almost hear the clock ticking in his mind, each tick a reminder of his dwindling time. He scanned the dimly lit interior, searching for Quill, his resolve hardening. But just as he found the courage to call out, laughter echoed from the shadows. Icarus Quill's voice, smooth and mocking, sent chills down Fable's spine. "Did you really think you could just walk in here?" The sound slithered through the sanctuary, wrapping around him like a serpent, tightening with every breath he took. Panic surged, clawing at his throat. No backup, no escape, just him facing a monster. Fable's heart raced as he stepped deeper into the sanctuary. The laughter echoed again, but it was no longer just Quill's taunts that filled the air. Dark figures emerged from the shadows, guards, their faces masked, weapons drawn, surrounding him like vultures, circling their prey. Fable's breath quickened, a sharp pain blossoming in his chest. The sanctuary, once a refuge, now felt like a cage. "You're trapped, Rook," one of the guards sneered, stepping forward. The walls seemed to close in, and Fable's mind screamed for a way out. But there was none. The clock's relentless ticking echoed louder, now mocking him, taunting him with the reality that he was running out of time. Fable's mind raced as adrenaline surged through him. He had to confront Quill, he had to demand answers. But with every glance at the guards, that resolve faltered. He could rush in and risk everything, or he could stay and find another way. But time wasn't on his side. The week's end loomed like a dark cloud, threatening to rain down consequences he couldn't foresee. "What's it going to be, Rook?" Quill's voice sliced through Fable's turmoil, and he felt the weight of the decision bearing down on him. No good choices lay ahead, only the knowledge that every moment wasted brought him closer to failure. "I'll expose you, Quill!" Fable shouted, the words feeling like a desperate plea rather than a promise. But just as he took a step forward, the guards lunged.
Fable staggered back, heart racing, the blade's bite a breath away. The sanctuary loomed around him, a facade of tranquility, belaying the storm brewing within. Water cascaded down the stone walls, its gentle rush a mockery of the chaos unfolding. Shadows danced in the corners, and somewhere in the depths of this deceptive calm lay Icarus Quill, the architect of his despair. Fable clenched his fists, resolve hardening like iron. He had come to negotiate, to reclaim a life dangling by a thread. But the guards were a wall of muscle and menace, their eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. The air grew thick with tension, a silent promise that he was not welcome here. But every moment wasted tightened the noose around his ally's neck. Fable straightened, gaze locked on the nearest guard. The man sneered, a smirk curling his lips as he shifted his weight, muscles coiling like a predator ready to pounce. "You think you can just walk in here, Rook? This is Quill's domain. You're nothing but a fly in his web." Fable's breath quickened. He hadn't come to play games. "I'm not leaving without my ally. You can tell Quill that." The guard leaned closer, the scent of sweat and danger mingling in the air. A laugh rumbled from deep within him, low and mocking. "And what makes you think we care about your little rescue mission? You've already lost." Fable's stomach twisted. He had to stand firm to push through the fear clawing at him. He lunged forward, adrenaline surging, drawing the guard's attention. The knife glinted again, a reminder of the stakes. He dodged to the side, a heartbeat away from disaster, and in that moment the world narrowed to the thud of his pulse and the distant echo of water. What if they had already hurt his ally? The guard barked orders, and 3 more stepped forward, each a hulking shadow filled with menace. Fable's resolve faltered, but he squared his shoulders, unwilling to show weakness. "You don't have to do this," Icarus can be reasoned with. "I—" A sudden shout interrupted him, and Fable spun, his heart dropping as one guard shoved a bound figure into the light. The sight struck him like a fist to the gut. His ally, bruised and silent, crumpled to the ground, eyes glazed over in fear. Rage ignited within him, hot and furious. "What have you done?" he roared, the words tearing from his throat. The guards chuckled, their laughter a bitter symphony of triumph. They had won this round, but Fable's determination flared, igniting the darkness threatening to consume him.
"You think this is a game, Rook?" The lead guard taunted, stepping closer, a predator closing in on its prey. "This is how we play. You step out of line, you pay the price. Your friend? Just a reminder, a warning." Fable's hands trembled, the weight of desperation crushing down.
The cascading sanctuary loomed before Fable, a breathtaking facade of glass that shimmered under the midday sun, reflecting the vibrant greens and blues of the valley. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and wildflowers, a fragrant promise mingling with the mist that danced like ghosts around him. Waterfalls' roar filled his ears, a constant reminder of nature's power, while the polished stone beneath his feet felt cool and unforgiving. Shadows flickered through the atrium, a contrast to the brightness outside, whispering secrets of the criminal dealings that dwelled within. He paused, heart racing, the weight of impending confrontation pressing down as he stepped forward into the deceptive calm of the sanctuary. Fable's breath quickened as he ventured deeper into the sanctuary, the sound of rushing water echoing ominously through the polished corridors. Each step felt like a countdown, the smooth stone beneath his boots slick with the remnants of the waterfall's spray. He could almost taste the tension in the air, a metallic tang that mingled with the earthy scent of moss and stone. The sunlight, streaming through the glass ceiling, cast intricate patterns on the floor, but it did little to warm the chill creeping up his spine. He could hear the low murmur of voices ahead, punctuated by the occasional sharp laugh that shattered the sanctuary's tranquility, a reminder of the danger lurking behind the beauty. As he reached a large observation deck overlooking the valley, Fable's eyes darted to the figures gathered within. Icarus Quill stood at the center, their presence commanding. The way they leaned casually against the railing belied the threat woven into their every word. Fable clenched his fists, the rough texture of the stone railing grounding him as he listened to the conversation unfold. The air was thick with smoke from the distant fires of the valley, mingling with the floral sweetness around him, an intoxicating blend that made his head spin. A chill ran through him as Quill's voice, smooth as silk, cut through the air, outlining the stakes of the negotiation with a precision that felt like a knife against his throat. As the conversation escalated, Fable felt the sanctuary shift around him, the once tranquil atmosphere suffocating under the weight of Icarus Quill's threats. The mist from the waterfall clung to his skin like a warning, and the echo of rushing water now felt like a countdown to disaster. He took a step back, heart pounding, every instinct screaming for him to flee, yet he remained tethered by the knowledge he might uncover something vital. In that moment of retreat, he caught snippets of a plan, a dark melody woven through whispered words that hinted at a deeper conspiracy. The sanctuary, with its beauty and menace, became a prison, and he realized that the true battle was just beginning. The cascading sanctuary loomed in the dusk, its waterfalls casting long shadows over the weathered stone paths. Fable Rook's heart drummed a frantic rhythm as he approached the flickering lanterns lining the entrance. The air was thick with the scent of wild herbs and the lingering aroma of goat meat sizzling over an open flame. Nearby, vendors called out, their voices rich with the cadence of the market, peddling freshly caught cave fish and vibrant wild berries. Fable's stomach twisted in hunger, but he pressed forward, the thought of his ally, bound and helpless, eclipsing all else. In this realm, where the crime family ruled, every step felt like walking into a snare, and he could almost hear the whispered warnings of the vanished people, urging caution. As he stepped inside, the warmth of the sanctuary enveloped him, but it was the sight of Icarus Quill that froze him in place. Quill leaned casually against the stone wall, arms crossed, a wicked smile playing on his lips. Behind him, Fable's ally was slumped on a low bench, hands bound and eyes wide with fear. A flicker of recognition passed between them, and Fable's throat tightened. He felt the weight of the crime family's power pressing down like the heavy humidity of the evening air. Quill gestured dismissively, his fingers twirling a small carved token, a local craft made from smooth river stones, an offering for favor he had not earned. The ground felt unsteady beneath Fable's feet, and the urge to flee warred with the helpless determination to save his friend. "You think you can resist, Fable?" Quill's voice dripped with mockery, echoing off the damp stone. "Look around. This is our domain, and your ally, well, he's just collateral damage in a game far bigger than you. I suggest you rethink your choices." The words wrapped around Fable like chains, heavy and suffocating. He caught a glimpse of the waterfall outside, shimmering in the last light of dusk, and remembered the old superstition: to speak the names of the vanished people after sunset was to invite their wrath. His heart raced. He couldn't let fear paralyze him. Every instinct urged him to shout his ally's name, to break the silence that surrounded them, but the chilling gaze of Quill kept him silent. The crime family thrived on fear, and here, in the sanctuary, it felt palpable, a living thing.
Fable's stomach churned, not just from hunger, but from the desperation gnawing at him. Quill leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You want him back? All it takes is one small sacrifice. The truth you seek, unmasking the conspiracy, comes at a price. You know how the game is played. You bring me what I want, and maybe your friend walks away? Refuse and well?" He let the threat linger in the air, like the acrid smoke from a nearby fire pit, the scent mingling with the herbal tea being brewed by a
The cascading sanctuary, with its vibrant hues of dusk, felt more like a graveyard than a refuge as Fable Rook stood at the water's edge. The roar of the waterfall drowned out his racing heart, yet he felt the weight of despair pressing down on him. His ally was gone, snatched away by Icarus, Quill, and the crime family that had crafted the very darkness he sought to expose. Time was slipping through his fingers. If he didn't unmask the conspiracy by the end of the week, the consequences would be irreversible. Fable clenched his fists, the taste of fear mingling with determination. He couldn't let despair claim him, not now, not ever. Fable's breath caught as he leaned against the cool stone, his mind replaying the confrontation with Icarus. Each second felt like a countdown, echoing in the back of his mind. He could hear the laughter of the crime family, feel their grip tightening around the town, and it made his skin crawl. He had always felt like a puppet, but now, with his strings cut, he was left dangling in uncertainty. What could he do? Flee and save himself, or fight back, knowing full well the danger? He pressed his palms against his temples, fighting against the swell of panic rising like the water before him. 3 days left, 3 days until the truth remained buried forever. He had to act. But what if he failed? A twig snapped behind him, jolting Fable out of his spiraling thoughts. He turned, heart pounding, but it was only the wind teasing the underbrush. Still, the moment reminded him of his vulnerability, of the very real threat looming over him. A knot twisted in his stomach. He could just run. Leave this place, abandon the fight, and escape the nightmare. But what about his ally? What about the townspeople who depended on him? He felt the weight of their hopes pressing down on him, and the thought of abandoning them left him breathless. The sanctuary was no longer a refuge. It was a prison of his own making, and the ticking clock was a constant reminder of his limitations. With a deep inhale, he steadied himself. No, he couldn't let fear dictate his actions, but the thought of confrontation with the crime family sent chills down his spine. Icarus Quill was a force he could barely comprehend, a storm of ambition and ruthlessness. Fable's hands trembled as he imagined the power Quill wielded, the lives he toyed with. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, to escape the chaos that threatened to consume him. Yet deep down, he felt a flicker of resolve. He couldn't abandon the fight. Not now. But as he stared into the darkening water, doubt clawed at him. Would he be strong enough? Would he lose everything he had fought for? The answer loomed like a shadow in the depths of the sanctuary. As the last light of day faded, Fable made his choice. He straightened, drenched in resolve, but still trembling from fear. He would confront Icarus, Quill, and the crime family, no matter the cost. He had to gather strength to rally whatever allies he could find. Chapter 6. Dawn of Descent. The first light of dawn crested over the grand plaza of Breathing Falls, illuminating the anxious faces of the townsfolk gathered beneath the ancient stone archways. Fable Rook stood at the center, heart pounding, sweat beading on his brow. The time for silence was over. If he didn't expose the crime family's corruption before the week ended, the people would face a fate they couldn't escape: servitude to a malevolent puppet master. He took a deep breath, steadying himself against the weight of the moment. "The artifact holds the power to break their chains," he shouted, voice reverberating off the walls, igniting hope among the crowd. Yet the shadows loomed threateningly, and he felt the urgency claw at his insides. Fable's words hung in the air, electrifying the crowd, but a low rumble of discontent, mixed with fear, swept through the plaza as a figure emerged from the shadows. Icarus Quill, the crime lord, stepped forward, flanked by menacing enforcers with eyes full of malice. The vibrancy of Fable's speech faltered, the crowd's hope dimming as Quill's icy gaze swept over them. "You think this puppet can save you?" Quill's voice dripped with disdain, slicing through the morning air. "I'll give you one chance to walk away. Anyone who stands against me will suffer consequences far worse than death." Fable's heart raced. He could see the wavering fear in the eyes of the townspeople, the clock ticking down to the last desperate moment before they would succumb to silence once more. As Quill's threat hung like a guillotine blade, Fable felt the weight of his own limitations. The knowledge he had unearthed about the artifact flickered in his mind, but how to harness it against such intimidation? "You're wrong, Quill," he shouted,
forcing his voice to rise above the mounting dread. Your power is built on fear, but the truth is a force stronger than you can imagine. The crowd stirred, wavering between loyalty and fear, and Fable's throat tightened. Time raced forward. If he didn't act now, all hope would shatter. 3 days left, he thought. 3 days until they would be trapped in a promise they could never keep, and he had to rally them before it was too late. Another enforcer stepped forward, cracking his knuckles, a menacing smile curling on his lips. "What's the puppet gonna do? Dance for us?" Laughter erupted among the enforcers, echoing through the plaza, drowning out Fable's voice. Panic surged as Fable scanned the crowd. Some looked ready to flee, while others stood rooted, fear paralyzing them. He had to push past the terror. "I can show you how to use the artifact," he yelled, desperation threading through his words. "But if you don't stand with me, we'll lose everything." The weight of their silence pressed down like a vice, and he felt time slipping through his fingers, the consequences looming like a storm. The moment stretched, and Fable's resolve began to wane.
The cascading sanctuary thrummed with the desperate energy of rushing water, its sound drowning out the chaos that swirled outside. Fable Rook stood at the heart of the sanctuary, feeling the weight of the townspeople's expectations crush down on him. Icarus Quill's threat loomed like a shadow, promising consequences that would seal their fates if he failed to unveil the truth of the crime family's corruption before the week ended. The clock was ticking, each moment slipping away like the water cascading over the rocks. Fable's heart raced in his chest, a wild drumbeat against the backdrop of his fear. He had to rally the locals to inspire them to stand against the looming darkness, but self-doubt gnawed at him, threatening to pull him under. The walls of the sanctuary felt like they were closing in, each echo of the water a reminder of how little time he had left. Fable clenched his fists, remembering the fear etched on the faces of the townspeople. They were looking to him for guidance, yet he could barely quell his own terror. What if he failed them? What if they turned against him, believing Quill's lies? He could almost hear the whispers of doubt creeping in, taunting him with the certainty of his failure. The deadline weighed heavily on him. If he didn't expose the truth soon, the promise he would make would be nothing but a chain of lies. 3 days left. "I can't let them down," he murmured, but the words felt hollow, echoing back at him with cruel mockery. Fable's breath quickened as he paced the sanctuary, the water's rush, an ominous reminder of the urgency pressing down on him. Memories of the artifact's revelations flashed before him, moments of strength that felt like distant stars in a dark sky, but doubts clawed at him, whispering that Icarus Quill's power was too great, that the people were too afraid to follow. He paused, heart pounding, wrestling with the thought of their despair. How could he inspire courage in others when he was barely holding on to his own? Sweat trickled down his back as he grappled with his choices, each one a gamble that could lead to ruin. Just then, a loud crash echoed from outside, a sign that the chaos Quill promised was creeping closer. Fable's heart sank. If he didn't act now, he would lose everything. He closed his eyes, feeling the cool mist from the waterfall against his skin, reminding him of the power that flowed through the sanctuary. No time to falter, no time to succumb to fear. He recalled the strength that had surged through him before, igniting a flicker of hope. "I have to try," he whispered, resolute, but the fear still trembled in his chest, the knowledge that convincing the townspeople would be an uphill battle against their terror. As the crashing sound grew louder, he could feel the panic rising. What if Quill's men were already here? Fable's resolve solidified, but the clock was still ticking. The urgency to act surged within him like the water rushing around him, propelling him forward. The grand plaza of Breathing Falls buzzed with the energy of the dusk crowd, an unsuspecting sea of faces, oblivious to the storm brewing at its center. Fable Rook stood at the heart of it all, clutching the ancient artifact that pulsed with a life of its own, its warmth radiating through his fingers. If he didn't expose the truth behind the crime family's corruption before the week ended, the consequences would become permanent. 3 days, just 3 days left to unmask Icarus and the insidious grip of his family on their community. Fable's heart raced, each beat a reminder that time was slipping away. This moment was his chance, the only chance, to rally those around him and ignite the courage they all needed. Fable locked eyes with Icarus, who leaned casually against a marble fountain, his lips curling into a mockingly confident smile. "You really think that trinket can save them?" Icarus gestured dismissively at the artifact. "You're chasing shadows, Fable. The past is just that, the past. What matters is the here and now. And right now, you're losing your grip on reality."
Fable's pulse quickened as he stepped closer, the crowd tightening around them. The air crackled with tension, each breath heavier than the last, as he fought the rising doubt Icarus sowed. "No, I'm unmasking the truth. Every moment I waste here brings us closer to a future we can't afford to accept." Icarus's laughter rang out, sharp and biting, slicing through the mounting anxiety. "But what if I told you that artifact isn't what you think? That it was never meant to be a weapon against us? It's a key to a door you're not ready to open. Trust me, you don't want to know what lies beyond it." Fable's throat tightened, a sinking feeling clawing at his gut. Was he really prepared to uncover whatever darkness lay hidden? The crowd shifted, whispers rising like a tide. Time felt like it was warping, pressing down on him, and Fable could sense their uncertainty mirrored in his own. He had to act before the chance slipped away. "You're lying. I won't let you twist this. We have to expose you before it's too late." The seconds ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity, as Icarus stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper, yet resonating with an unsettling clarity. "What if I told you your precious artifact was a part of a greater plan? One that doesn't just involve you, but your entire community. You'd be risking their lives for a mere illusion." Fable's breath hitched, a cold sweat breaking out across his brow. He had always believed that the artifact held the power to dismantle Icarus's grip, but now doubt.
Scene 4. Fable, driven by a newfound sense of purpose, sneaks into the hidden chamber of the sanctuary where the ancient artifact is kept. As she examines the relic, she discovers inscriptions detailing the crime family's vulnerabilities. Just as she starts to grasp the significance of this knowledge, Icarus enters, but she manages to hide in time, leaving her inspired and determined to use this information to rally the locals. Dawn crept through the jagged stone openings of the cascading sanctuary, casting long shadows over the ancient inscriptions that Fable Rook desperately studied. His heart raced, a relentless drum echoing in his chest as he traced the glyphs with trembling fingers. The artifact pulsed in its hidden alcove, its secrets slipping through his grasp like sand through fingers. Time was a cruel master, and he had mere days left to expose the crime family's corruption before it solidified into the town's painful reality. With every breath, the weight of impending doom pressed down upon him. Failure meant the townspeople would suffer under the family's iron grip forever. He couldn't let that happen. Fable leaned closer to the stone tablet, squinting at the intricate symbols that danced before him. His fingers traced a jagged line, and suddenly a phrase clicked in his mind: "The shadows conceal the truth, and light reveals the chains." He gasped, the realization igniting a flicker of hope. Just as he prepared to jot down the rest of the inscription, the heavy wooden door creaked open, sending a jolt of panic through him. Icarus stood silhouetted in the doorway, his presence a dark omen that threatened to extinguish Fable's fragile flame of revelation. The air grew thick with tension, and Fable's pulse quickened. He had to finish decoding the inscription before Icarus could reclaim the artifact and crush his plans. "Icarus!" Fable's voice trembled, clenching his fists. "You can't just barge in here. I'm close to exposing your family's lies." Icarus's lips curled into a sinister smile, his eyes glinting with malice. "You think you can rally the townsfolk against me? You have no idea what you're up against. Time is running out, Fable. You have until the end of the week, and after that, nothing will save you or your precious town." Icarus took a step closer, invading Fable's space, and the scent of danger clung to him like a shroud. Fable's throat tightened, but he stood his ground. He had to find a way to protect the artifact and himself, but every second wasted felt like another nail in the coffin of his plan. The room felt smaller as Icarus circled him, his every word a calculated strike designed to intimidate. "You think hiding the artifact will save you? You underestimate my reach. I have eyes everywhere, and they will find you before you can even think of exposing the truth. You're just a puppet, and puppets don't pull the strings, they dance to the tune of their masters. Remember that?" Fable's heart raced, a wild drumbeat against the mounting pressure. Icarus was right. If he didn't act quickly, the townspeople would remain oblivious to the threat looming over them. He had to outsmart Icarus, but how? In a flash of inspiration, Fable recalled the last part of the inscription. Chapter 7. Shadows of Resolve. Fable Rook stood at the edge of the Grand Plaza, dusk settling like a heavy shroud around him. The flickering lanterns cast uneasy shadows, stretching and twisting as if warning him against the words he was about to unleash.
3 days left. If he failed to expose the crime family's conspiracy now, the consequences would be permanent, binding the townsfolk in chains of silence and fear. As he glanced at the gathering crowd, their faces illuminated by the dying light, he felt his heart race, pounding against his ribs like a desperate drum. This was his moment. He had to reveal the truth about Icarus Quill and the afflictions plaguing their lives. He could not falter. Not now. Fable took a deep breath, the scent of sweat and uncertainty swirling around him. He stepped forward, knees trembling, and cleared his throat. People of Breathing Falls, I stand before you because our silence feeds their power. Icarus Quill and his family are not protectors, they are our oppressors. The crowd murmured, uncertainty flickering in their eyes like the dying flames of the lanterns. Doubt gnawed at him. What if they turned against him? What if Icarus's threats silenced them before he could even begin? He pressed on, his voice trembling but growing stronger. Look around. The sickness, the fear. It's not just bad luck, it's them. They've been experimenting on us, using our very lives for their twisted games. A man in the front spat on the ground, shaking his head, fear etched across his face. You're mad, Rook. Speaking against Quill will get you killed. Panic gripped Fable's chest. The clock was ticking. He could feel the weight of Icarus's threats, the weight of the townspeople's apathy. How could he convince them to fight when they were so terrified? Fable's heart raced as he fought against the tide of doubt. What's worse, living like this under their thumb, or taking a stand? He scanned the crowd, their faces tense, caught between fear and uncertainty. A woman's eyes flickered with recognition, and she stepped forward. You're right, but what can we do? We're just us. Her voice trembled, echoing the collective fear in the air. Fable's breath hitched. He had to inspire them, but the stakes felt impossibly high. If he failed, he wouldn't just lose their trust, he would seal their fate. We can unite, we have strength in numbers. His words echoed with urgency, igniting a spark in the crowd. Could they really stand against the monster that was Icarus Quill? As he spoke, a wave of determination surged through him. He could see the flicker of hope igniting in their eyes, but doubt still clouded their hearts. What if they faltered? What if they chose silence instead of action? With every word he spoke, the clock ticked down, reminding him that their
The grand plaza of Breathing Falls pulsed with a restless energy as dusk draped the sky in shadows. Fable Rook stood before the gathered crowd, heart racing, an urgent weight pressing down on his chest. Every second counted. The conspiracy of the crime family loomed like a dark cloud over the valley, and if he failed to expose it before the week ended, the consequences would be permanent. The townspeople's murmurs blended into a low hum of fear and uncertainty. But Fable's resolve sharpened. He had to unveil the truth, to unite these people against the suffocating grip of Icarus Quill and his enforcers. The clock was ticking, and he was their only hope. Fable's voice trembled as he began, the words tumbling out in a rush. They've poisoned our water. They've turned our loved ones into experiments. The crime family has been siphoning our very lives away. The crowd shifted, unease rippling through them like a cold breeze. He could feel the weight of their fear, heavy and palpable, almost suffocating. How could he ask them to stand against Icarus Quill when his reputation loomed like a dark shadow? But he pressed on, each word an attempt to ignite courage where despair had taken root. I know you're scared, but if we don't act now, we'll lose everything. The silence that followed was deafening. Fable's heart drummed against his ribs. From the corner of his eye he caught the glint of Icarus Quill's eyes, cold and calculating. They watched him, waiting, ready to snuff out this flicker of rebellion. Fable swallowed hard, sweat slicking his palms. The crowd was shifting again, uncertainty creeping back in. They'll come for us, someone shouted, panic creeping into their voice. Fable's stomach twisted. He felt the truth of it. They were torn between fear and hope, and time was slipping through their fingers. He had to keep them focused. If we stand together, we can outnumber them, but we have to do it now. As he spoke, a knot of resolve began to form in the crowd. Faces turned from anxious to determined, but Fable could still sense the lingering fear. One man stepped forward, his brow furrowed. What if we fail, Fable? What if they retaliate? Fable's heart sank. The dilemma weighed heavily on him. He could feel the clock ticking down, reminding him of the promise he knew he couldn't keep. I cannot guarantee safety, but I promise this: if we don't unite, we lose our future entirely. By dawn, it'll be too late. With every word he felt the urgency, each moment slipping away, pushing him closer to the edge. The crowd was holding its breath, teetering on the brink of action or inaction, and he was losing them to doubt.
Then, from the shadows, a low, mocking laugh cut through the tension like a knife. Icarus Quill stepped forward, flanked by his enforcers, their presence a chilling reminder of the danger that accompanied rebellion. "Look at you, Fable, a puppet trying to wrap—"
Dusk draped the grand plaza of Breathing Falls in a shroud of lavender and indigo, shadows stretching like dark fingers across the cobblestones. The air was thick with the earthy scent of damp soil, mingling with the sweet, haunting perfume of wildflowers that lined the paths. Fable Rook stood on a makeshift platform, his small patch of faded fabric catching the last rays of sunlight, glistening like forgotten memories. The murmurs of the gathered crowd rustled around him, a mixture of apprehension and hope. He could feel their breaths quickening, tangling with the soft echoes of the waterfall nearby, a reminder that the calm was but a mask hiding the chaos beneath. With a gentle tilt of his head, Fable prepared to speak, his heart pounding in rhythm with the flow of water. He had to ignite their courage tonight. Failure was not an option. Fable raised his arms wide, the fabric of his form flowing like water, embodying the grace he once displayed on stage. He hummed a soft melody, its notes drifting through the air, drawing attention away from the looming figure of Icarus Quill, who stood nearby, eyes narrowed, calculating. "Look, my friends!" Fable gestured dramatically, his voice a melodic whisper that danced above the crowd. "What has been done to our valley? The laughter once filled these streets, but now we are silenced by fear." The crowd leaned in, breaths held, and Fable felt the warmth of their shared despair pressing upon him, urging him to continue. Icarus's voice cut through the air like a blade, sharp and deliberate. "You think you can sway them, little puppet? They need strength, not your songs of sorrow. Remember who holds the power here." His words dripped with honeyed malice, causing the crowd's resolve to waver. Fable's heart sank, but as the scent of wildflowers intensified, memories of children's laughter flooded his mind, remnants of the joy he once brought. He would not let Quill's darkness snuff out that light. "No more shadows," he cried, gesturing toward the flickering lanterns lighting the square. "We can reclaim our voices." The crowd's murmurs began to shift, a low thrum of agreement. Fable seized the moment, stepping closer to the edge of the platform, the mist curling around him, wrapping him in a veil of determination. "We have suffered long enough." He caught the eye of a woman in the front row, her face etched with worry, and mimicked a warm smile, trying to ease her fears. "Together we can stand against the darkness." The crowd shifted restlessly in the grand plaza of Breathing Falls, their anticipation coiling tightly in the air. Fable stood atop the makeshift platform, the twilight sky casting a violet hue over his determined face. Icarus Quill loomed nearby, a dark silhouette against the deepening dusk, his henchmen flanking him like shadows. Fable's heart thrummed with a fierce pulse, the weight of the gathered souls pressing against him, urging him to unveil the truth. He inhaled deeply, the scent of damp earth mingling with the distant roar of the falls, grounding him as he prepared to ignite their spirits. "Together we can shatter the silence," he shouted, his voice slicing through the charged atmosphere, a spark against the encroaching night. "The crime family has woven a web of deceit, and we are caught in it." Fable's words surged forth, fierce and unwavering. The crowd leaned in, eyes wide, hearts beating as one. Icarus's sneer twisted, a cold wind against the warmth of their unity. He stepped forward, his presence like a storm cloud threatening to break. "You think your voice holds power, Fable," he spat, the venom in his tone echoing through the plaza. But Fable pressed on, each syllable igniting the embers of courage within him. "They think they can silence us." His hands clenched into fists, and he thrust them into the air, urging the people to rise alongside him. "But we are stronger than their lies." Fable's breath quickened as he locked eyes with the crowd, a sea of faces reflecting hope and defiance. He could not falter now, not with the truth so close around him. Murmurs swelled, a chorus building against the backdrop of Icarus's menacing glare. "What will you do?" he called, his voice steady, despite the tremor of adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Will you let them dictate our fate?" The locals stirred, a restless energy thrumming beneath their feet, their collective spirit whispering encouragement. Fable's heart danced with their resolve, each heartbeat a reminder that he was not alone. Icarus stepped forward, his voice a low growl, but Fable forged ahead,
words spilling forth like water breaking through a dam. "This is our home," he declared, gesturing toward the majestic falls that had witnessed that
As dusk settled over the grand plaza of Breathing Falls, the last rays of sunlight trickled through the cascading waterfalls, illuminating the stone columns that rose like ancient sentinels around the gathering space. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and moss, mingling with the faint aroma of crushed medicinal herbs from the crowd's whispers. Fable Rook stood on the makeshift platform, heart pounding in rhythm with the distant rush of water, the cool breeze brushing against his skin, leaving a trail of goosebumps. Underfoot, the cobblestones glistened with mist, each step a reminder of the danger lurking in the shadows. Around him, the crowd shifted uneasily, the tension palpable, a living entity fueled by fear and anticipation. Fable's voice rang out, slicing through the murmurs like the sharp edge of a blade against steel. "Look at the dry fountain, once a symbol of our prosperity. It now stands empty, just like the promises of the crime family that has shackled us for too long." He gestured toward the fountain, its cracked stone surface reflecting the last flickers of light, a stark reminder of lost hope. The crowd's whispers faded, replaced by an electric silence that thrummed in the air, urging him to continue to break the chains of fear that held them captive. The sound of rushing water filled the plaza, a relentless reminder of the world outside their collective strife. Fable took a deep breath, the cool evening air tinged with the scent of wet stone and moss, invigorating yet familiar. His voice trembled, not with fear, but with fervor. "They want us to believe we are powerless, that their grip on our lives is unbreakable, but together we can reclaim our future." Each word reverberated against the ancient stone, the very walls seeming to lean in, eager to hear the truth unveiled. He could feel the tension shift, the crowd leaning forward, hungry for change. As he locked eyes with the faces before him, Fable noticed the glimmers of uncertainty begin to fade. He continued, his heart racing, propelled by the courage growing within. "Unity is our greatest weapon. Stand with me, stand against the shadows that have tormented us for too long." The air thickened with their collective breath, the whispers of dissent transforming into murmurs of hope. The uneven cobblestones beneath him felt less like treacherous ground and more like the foundation of a new beginning, each heartbeat echoing a promise of solidarity. As the final words left his lips, a roar erupted from the crowd, a wave of sound that crashed against the stone walls of the plaza, drowning out the whispers of doubt that had once filled the air. Fable stood,